In the second part of our discussion about performance breach and discharge, we will focus on the notion of breach of contract. When a contract is breached, it is a failure without any legal reason or excuse to live up to the terms of the contract. And a breach would involve refusing to perform what you're supposed to do, or a breach could also involve making it extremely difficult for the other side to perform their end of the bargain. A lot of people get confused now between the notion of breach and consideration. So I wanted to essentially draw out, if I could, the difference between consideration failure and a breach. So if we have a contract between you and me, I'm going to do my standard contract to sell a car. $4,000. Okay, so that's just pretty much our standard contract. There is in fact consideration in this agreement. We could actually diagram it out. So we look first for legal value, and we see that money has legal value. The promise or the action of giving a car also has legal value. We've got a simultaneous exchange of benefits and detriments too in this bilateral contract. Here's the detriment, here's the benefit, here's the detriment, here's the benefit. And of course, I would suggest that although that's probably a low price for a car, I had a full opportunity to negotiate. And so did you. You made a good bargain. So as you can see, there is in fact consideration in this deal. When the time comes, if it turns out that we execute the contract as follows, you pay me my money, and you're waiting for delivery of the car. So let's draw out our contractual timeline. The negotiation took place. The negotiation arose in the exchange of the $1,000 for the car. The contract was formed. If it's in New Jersey, it would be even in writing because it's above $500. It's time to perform. Performance has in fact taken place on your end. You've given me money. Ah, but I still have my car, and you can't find me. That's a breach of contract. So as you can see, the performance took place, but the discharge did not take place because the contract is still executory on my part. And because you can't find me, you can't locate me, I'm not answering your calls, I'm not returning your emails, and I'm not at the address that you knew me to be at, it appears that I've breached the contract and taken off with your dough. Okay, so that is hopefully the difference. So you can see the difference between a failure of consideration or a problem with consideration and a breach. So when we have a breach of contract, we have essentially two prime ways to assign damages. But the most common way, it's the default if you would, is to look for so-called standard, or what I like to call normal damages to occur. We can put them actually on a timeline themselves, because the policy of standard damages would be to put the parties in the place they would have been had that contract been performed. So let's actually put them on a timeline. And here it is. We start with the period of negotiation, which gives rise to a contract. That contract is performed. The contract is hopefully discharged, and if it's discharged, we have just identified the place the parties would be in if the contract had been performed. That's this place right here. So what we're looking for is the amount of money that would put them in that place. Let's see how we do that. There are two common types of damages, consequential and compensatory damages. Compensatory damages are damages that contract the aggrieved party for the breach. So in the car example, if it turns out that you breach the contract, you say to me, I'm very sorry, Professor Morris, but I'm not going to buy your car. No way, how? I know I've agreed. I know we have a contract. It may even be a written signed contract because we're in New Jersey, but I'm not giving you my money. That's a breach. And so I'm entitled to damages. Well, what place would I be in if the contract had been performed? I'd have $1,000 of your money, but I would no longer have a car. So if I try my best to sell it, and I try my best to sell it, and I try my best to sell it, and I cannot sell it, I can sue you for breach, and the judge would most likely award me $1,000. If I try my best to sell it, and I in fact do sell it to somebody else for $800, I have a breach, I can sue you, and the judge would most likely award me $200 in compensatory damages. If you have a breach and I try to sell it, and I try to sell it, and I in fact do sell it to somebody for $1,200, it turns out that I made more as the result of your breach. And so you owe me 0 compensatory damages. But there's also something called consequential damages. Consequential or incidental damages are compensation for indirect losses. An indirect loss in my case would probably be something like, the money I paid to put a for sale sign in the window of my car. Say that cost me $10. Well, I wouldn't have to have incurred that cost if in fact you had gone through with your end of the deal. And so you would have to pay me, if I ultimately sold my car for $800, you'd pay me $200 consequential. I'm sorry, $200 compensatory and $10 consequential, or $210 total. If, because of a breach, I had to buy the for sale sign, I put it in my car, it cost me $10, and then I sold the car for $1,200, you'd owe me 0 compensatory and $10 consequential. And what if it wasn't me that was breaching? You that's breaching. What if it was me? What if I decide I don't want to sell you my car. I actually have a strong affection for it. And so you wind up not buying my car, but instead suing me for breach. Well, you're also going to be entitled to be put in the place that you would have been had the contract been performed. What place would that be? Well, probably that place would be the driver's seat of a 2008 Nissan Quest, which is my car. We could consider what the fair market value is of a 2008 Nissan Quest. It's got 64,000 miles on it, if it helps. Let's pretend it's $10,000. So you could see the difference between the $1,000 contract cost and the $10,000 that it would cost you to put your butt in the seat of the driver's seat of the 2008 Nissan Quest. So, to put you in the place you would have been had the contract been performed, it appears that you need $9,000 more dollars. And yes, that's the cost of breach for me. Now you're going to say, oh my goodness, that is way too high. And if it's my pocket, I'll agree with you. But that's the legal calculation that would be done by the court. Because I made a bad bargain, you don't have to pay for that. All right, let's look at some other doctrines. Punitive damages are the types of damages that are intended to punish a defendant. They are not available in contract actions commonly. But we studied them in torts. And so you should recall when they would apply, and that would be when the contractual defense also crosses over to a tort. In this case, that would be fraudulent misrepresentation. Then we have rescission and restitution. Now, we've already learned about rescission, and we've alluded to the fact that there are some monies that would take place or exchange as well. So on our contractual timeline, once again, we got our contract here, got our period of negotiation, we've got our discharge, that's the place you would have been had the contract been performed, and so these are our standard damages. Rescission and restitution takes place as if the contract had never been entered. That would be right here. And then, of course, we've got a special type of damages for quasi-contract, as much as he or she deserved. That would essentially be the fair payment for something that's done or the fair market value of the product. So far, we've seen three ways in which damages are calculated. Standard or normal damages, so-called default from the court, rescission or restitution, putting the parties in the place they would have been had the contract never been entered. Restitution means going back and repaying what somebody had already outlaid. And then for quasi-contract, we set the fair market value or fair payment for work done. There are a few doctrines I want you to be aware of in this area. The first is nominal damages. Nominal damages are damages that are awarded when you prove that you in fact had damages, but you can't prove how much it's really worth. So nominal damages are a tiny or small amount that would be awarded to a plaintiff who has proved that they've been legally damaged, but can't prove how much something is worth. In the instance where I sold my car for more money, the judge might award me compensatory damages that are nominal, like let's say $1. Liquidated damages is a pre-agreed upon amount of money in the event that the contract is breached. This is what you call your cell phone cancellation charge. This avoids the obligation of litigation to figure out how much money is owed and simply anticipates or fixes the amount of money at the outset of the contract. Liquidated damages. Mitigation of damages requires the aggrieved or injured party to try to minimize the damages that they have sustained as a result of the breach. So, for instance, a landlord who is required to go out to find a tenant for the remaining 9 months of the contract that the original tenant breached. That would be mitigation of damages. Specific performance is available to a contracting party where the item that is purchased or that is the subject of the contract is unique and scarce and not readily available. So, if the car contract was not in fact for a 2008 Nissan Quest, but instead for a 1967 Chevy Impala, it would be pretty hard to find another 1967 car that's comparable, so there might not be any amount of money that would restore the aggrieved party to the driver's seat, right, to the place they would have been had the contract been performed. So in that case, the judge might actually award them the driver's seat, the actual car, and specific performance. Injunctive relief is a award that a court might offer to get somebody to stop doing something. Like, for instance, stop picketing, stop working, and litigation costs. Well, we don't have a loser pays system. That does mean that every party has to pay their own attorney. But for other aspects of litigation, the parties can pass the cost on to the losing party, such as the filing fees for a case. And with that, I hope that gives you a nice overview to this area of the law. Happy studying.